that long-term experience versus just having shadowed for a few hours here or there, that's what's going to be a big part of making you stand out.
Hello, everyone. I am really excited because we have a fantastic guest, Andrea O'Brien. We are going to be talking today about the medical admissions process and everything that you guys want to hear about. So I just want you to start off our conversation by saying hello to our listeners and telling everyone about your journey to working in medical admissions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for asking me to be on your podcast. I'm really excited. Well, my name is Andrea O'Brien. I'm the Director of Admissions at A.T. Still University. We have 3 campuses, and I'm based on the Missouri campus. I work very closely with our osteopathic program in Missouri, so the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. I also work very closely with our dental school here, so our Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health. And I do work with the other programs on our Arizona campus and our California campus, which also include another dental school, another medical school, our allied health professions, and in California, we have a PA program. So wide variety of different programs that I work with, and it's a lot of fun. So my journey to this, I've been doing this for almost 14 years. In another 3 weeks, I'll have my 14-year, or actually about a month, I'll have a 14-year anniversary. So I'm very excited. I have worked pretty much my whole career, most of my career in student affairs. So I worked in residence life. I was a director of residence life at a mid-level institution for about 10 years and worked in some other grant-funded positions prior to that. But this has been just an incredible journey and something that my passion for just helping people and working with students is fulfilled pretty much every day.
That's awesome. And you are involved in a lot of different parts and aspects of life for students. So one of the key questions that a lot of our audience has, because there are so many people applying to medical school, is what are some ways that an applicant can kind of shine in this competitive arena since there are so many people applying?
Yeah, I think the authenticity of an application is something that we're looking at all the time. And so we want to see that people have passion. We want to know that this is definitely a field that they've spent a lot of time, not just, having parents and others say, oh, you'd be a good doctor because you're really smart, or a good dentist because you're really good with your hands and really good with people. Medicine and dentistry and other professions, they're difficult programs, and it's a very taxing and very demanding profession. So we want to make sure that people that are going into this field are authentic and they really have the motivation and the passion to do it. So, people that have gone into this journey without a lot of thought and not a lot of preparation don't stand out. So if you're wanting to make sure that you're standing out within the application process, making sure that you have the grades, making sure that you have solid test scores behind you, taking a wide variety of hard sciences beyond just the basic prerequisites is going to be important for us to assess your academic foundation. But beyond that, having experience. So being able to go into the health professions environment and work in a variety of settings in, either volunteer positions or in actually paid positions like a scribe or a medical assistant. You don't necessarily have to pay for certification to receive additional licensure or anything like that to be like a CNA or an EMT if you don't want to. There are plenty of positions where you can be trained on the job and get really great experience. But having a good variety of settings is very important. So again, that long-term experience versus just having shadowed for a few hours here or there, that's what's going to be a big part of making you stand out. But also having other experiences outside of healthcare. So giving back to your community and being a servant to others. As I said, healthcare can be a very demanding field, but it's also a very service-related field. You are serving others in trying to get them healthy and work with their healthcare. And so making sure that you've had experience working with people from a variety of different backgrounds, especially backgrounds that are different than yours, so that you are comfortable working with people, you understand more of the cultures that people might be coming from and some of those lifestyles and backgrounds, just to make sure that you're not caught off guard by phrases they use or terms they use or different customs that they may have. You're hopefully already somewhat familiar with that, or just very, accepting of others. So I know it's a little bit generic, but it's really about you and your experiences and your journey to get there, and us being able to see that you've done that over a longer period of time versus just in the last few months.
It wasn't actually very generic. I think that the advice was wonderful. And some of the key points that I want to pull out are making sure that you're doing it for you, not doing it because a parent or someone else had it. You have to have the true passion. And I think that comes out and it shines a lot, as we've been talking about in a lot of previous episodes, where you have to kind of uncover your why and be able to explain that not only on your personal statement and your secondary and your interview, but continually reassess that as you matriculate through the curriculum. And when you get to the point where you're applying to residency and everything, like thinking back to your why should be the core of why you're moving forward with this, because there are so many different ways, like you mentioned, to help people. Why medical school or dentistry or something like that? It has to be more than I want to help people. Mm-hmm. And then with that, I love that you said having the diverse longitudinal types of experiences in healthcare, because yes, you can shadow, and that's very important so that you can see, is this something you actually want to do, what the lifestyle is like, talking to the actual physicians who are doing it. But you also want these experiences to kind of help expose to the other sides of medicine, which they don't always tell you in a shadowing experience, as well as learning some of the terminology you may learn as a medical assistant or a scribe, or how to write notes. And not saying that you need to come into medical school fully developed, because we do not expect that. Right. But just having some exposure is very important to see if this is something you want to invest in for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then I love the third part you said about just being open to cultural competence, because most of your patients will not be like you, whether or not it's through training or in an environment you end up going into, and they shouldn't. So being open to learning more, because none of us knows everything, but asking questions and being professional as well as being kind and courteous is so important. And that kind of shines through as well when you're going through the admissions process, because people want to recruit people who you want to represent them. So absolutely, I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if your viewers haven't ever heard of Simon Sinek, he has the phrase of know your why. He has a lot of podcasts and books about the subject. And I would recommend highly that if you're wanting a little bit of professional development reading, to check that book out. It's fantastic.
Awesome. We'll probably put that in the show notes for those who are looking and listening and looking for opportunities to grow, which we all should be doing. Now, we've talked about ways to shine and to basically be yourself in the application, but sometimes we may come across some snafus or some no-nos. What are some things that you would recommend against
in the application process? Mm-hmm. So I would make sure that you're looking at the institutions and carefully evaluating which ones you want to apply to. You could apply to 50 schools if you wish to. It's very expensive, but if you have the budget, you could, and you would likely get some interviews or potentially acceptances, depending on what your background is. But, I always tell students, you want to go where you're going to fit and where you're going to feel comfortable, where you're going to feel supported, what the environment it is, what the mission of the school is like. Because if you're going to go to a school, invest that much time into becoming a physician, you want to go where you can be your most successful self. And the person that will be the most successful self is the person that feels supported and feels free and able to maybe make mistakes a little bit more easily, and maybe have the foundation within the school that if they start falling a little bit, that they know they're going to get caught. You want to make sure that you match the type of school that you're going to. So if you're not really interested in doing research, or, maybe you're more about the patient care, well, then you probably don't want to look at schools that are huge research institutions, because that's going to be a huge emphasis of their curriculum. If you want to be at a school that you're working with patients more, well, then look for those types of schools that are going to give you that type of curriculum. I know our program here in Kirksville is fantastic about getting a lot of hands-on experience with people and patients, and both in a simulated clinical setting as well as actual out in the community. And so if that's the kind of experience you're wanting to get, then do that. But again, the snafus are really not researching where you're applying to. And we can kind of tell if you're a person that doesn't really match who we are as an institution. You could have strong grades, you could have strong MCAT, you could have some other things that may match what we're looking for academically. But when we're looking through your experiences, if we're not seeing the match to mission within the things that you've done, then we may pass by you. So looking at that, making sure that you match the school, because like I said, we will pick those people out that match for us, but you want to go where you are best supported and most comfortable, because you'll be able to go way out of your comfort zone a lot more comfortably than maybe at a school that you don't feel like you fit or that you feel like you have that support. So that's a big question, or a big thing that I always tell students. Another thing that I always try to tell students is that if you do have like a stumbling block along the way, you had maybe a really rough transition to college, or maybe during your sophomore year, you had a huge breakup, or maybe a family illness or something, and your grades show it. Your grades, maybe your activities slid off, things were not the norm. And so what we want to see if you have those types of situations is that we want to see what happened. We want an explanation somewhere in the application. And I think a big no-no is when people just don't address it. We see those things in the application and we're going to be wondering what happened. And when we don't find any kind of explanation from the student, it kind of feels like you're trying to just slide it by, like we're not going to notice. But we do notice. We see everything. We do very holistic reviews, and a lot of schools do that. And so when we look at the application from the front to the end and we see those stumbling areas with no kind of explanation at all, not that you're on academic probation or that you left school or anything like that, but we can see something happened. So a big no-no, I guess, would be to not explain what happened in those situations. And then the other thing we kind of touched on earlier is just if you are kind of new to the decision of going into medicine, don't rush into your application process, because what's going to happen is that a student may apply, but if they would just wait one more year and get more experience, maybe brush up on a couple classes that may have maybe not gone so well the first time, if needed, or just finishing out some of those prerequisites. But again, finishing out and getting a much more longer term experience in the field. I think sometimes students are like, oh, I got to get my application in this cycle. And they're just not a great applicant at that point. And they honestly, one more year of doing all the great things that you could do in that 1 year, you could be a fantastic applicant. And so you're spending all this money to apply with probably very little, if no results. And then next year you have to explain why you're a reapplicant. And so that's not a terrible hurdle to get over, but you are going to have to show a significant change from your initial application to the next application. And you're going to have to explain what that change is. So sometimes I'll tell people, just wait a year. That way you don't have to go through that explanation. You don't have to waste a lot of money. Maybe if you need some additional classes, you can enroll in a master's program or a post-bac program or something like that to beef up those science grades. Or again, maybe it's your clinical experience, things like that. So I would say those are probably a few areas that I would definitely focus on.
Those are such important points, and I want to point out 3 of them. One is making sure that your mission is aligned with the institution. Not only are the institutions choosing you, you're choosing them too. So find a place where you want to be deeply engrossed into the culture for the next 4+ years. And you have to live in the environment. You have to have the mission of the organization where you're going to be serving the patient population. You're going to be around these people as your colleagues and your classmates. So you want to make sure that it's a good fit. And you do have a say in that by doing the research and applying to places that align with you and your mission and your personal values. Mm-hmm. The second part about having some of the stumbling blocks or blemishes, your application is the time where you need to highlight these, because this is the reason why they may bypass you if you don't kind of call out the elephant in the room. Like, you can't hide. So it's better to be upfront about it and just show how you've grown. Like, everybody has blemishes. There are so many reasons to have opportunities for growth, but as long as you show them and you've shown your maturity that you were able to address it, able to do something else, take another course if you stumbled, ask for help, like, these can show also leadership qualities that you had. And medical school is not easy. So when you get there, you may have some stumbling too. So it'll show how resilient you can be when you meet these obstacles. And then the third thing that I wanted to highlight that you said in terms of reapplications and all of that, and not being on that checklist. Everyone seems to have a checklist, like, I want to go to undergrad, to here. It doesn't happen that way for everyone, and that's okay. Sometimes you may need to take a gap year. Sometimes you may want to explore the field a little more because you're kind of maybe marrying this idea of what medicine is without necessarily exploring more of the depth of it. So it's okay to take some time. And then also, like you mentioned, if you're waitlisted, that's also okay, or if you have to apply again, but we want to try to prevent that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if somebody is waitlisted, we give feedback to students and so, or to applicants. And so, when students apply and they don't get accepted, we are completely fine if they email us and say, could somebody do a file review and give me some feedback for if I were to reapply? And we will do that. We'll do a deep dive into their application, and we'll figure out a couple things that we can tell them, or maybe it's more than a couple of things, but we'll definitely give them advice for if you're going to reapply, these are some areas that you will need to address. And then students need to do that. Like, they, sometimes they'll reapply and they won't follow the advice. And that's a mistake, is to not follow that advice, because we know what will make a stronger applicant. And so trying to take that and really run with that is a very important thing to do.
Yes, if you're given the roadmap, like, take that road, don't take the other turn.
Yeah.
How often are students who apply to your institution taken off of the wait list? Is it something that's very common, or is it something that there's a smaller chance?
No, I would say we're pretty careful about how big we build the wait list. And so we don't build an unnecessarily large wait list. We are pretty selective. And so we build it to be, based on experience as to how big we feel like it would be. We don't want to end the year with a tremendous number of students that are still on the wait list. So most of the people that are on the wait list will probably get a seat, but we also have a policy here at our medical school in Missouri, where if you are on our wait list and we don't have a seat for you this year, then you will be given automatic acceptance into the next year's class. And all you have to do is just put your deposit down by, I think it's October 1st. And so then you don't have to reapply. You don't have to go through anything further. You just have to put the deposit down and show up in a year. And wow. So not all schools do that, but it is something that we do on purpose, because we've already evaluated these students. We know they have what we want. We know that they, appear to be a really strong fit to us. And so we don't need them to go through this all over again. We would like to have them here, even if it means we just have to wait one more year.
That's awesome. Honestly, I have been hosting the show for about 3 years, and you guys are you are the first person that has mentioned that that's a possibility for some people. So that's amazing to hear.
Awesome.
One of my final questions is, a lot of students have questions about when they should submit their application, because, everyone's trying to triple check everything and make sure that it's perfect. Does it matter when you submit your application in the season? Yes, it does. But I also would caution that not to submit during the first month of the application being open if your application is not ready.
So if you know based on feedback and your just self-awareness that you need some more clinical and you have a whole bunch of clinical experiences that are lined up for the summertime, well, wait until August and submit your application in August. So that way you don't have to come back and have 3 months of updates. Some schools will accept updates, other schools won't. We do, but if you submit your application in June or May when it first opens, or if you submit your application in August, for us, that's not going to make a huge difference in our process. Yes, we will have already started screening some applications, but it's a very minor amount compared to the bulk that's going to be coming later in the cycle. So, same with MCAT. If your MCAT was kind of okay, but you really plan to retake it, maybe wait, depending on when your retake test date is. If it's not, if it's in August or maybe even September, depending on the school's timelines, you might want to wait and submit your application after that. If your first MCAT is really poor. If your first MCAT is okay, maybe it's right close to the range of what the school's averages are, you could always go ahead and submit your application with that MCAT, but then make sure if you have another test date already registered, that you note on the application that you do plan to retake the MCAT and let us know what that date is. Because our process, and I think a lot of other schools are very similar to this, but our process would be that we're going to put that in a hold queue until we get that new score. We do review applications once and we make a decision. And so some we may hold and wait on a decision in case more information would come in. But if we see an application and they are severely lacking in something, we may reject that application if they've not told us more information is coming. So again, if you have a really poor MCAT but you plan to retake that MCAT, make sure that's noted on your application so we can go ahead and hold on to that application until we get the new score. Applying very, very late in the cycle, make sure that you're looking at what the end dates are of the cycle, but don't shoot to get it in at the last minute, because at that point, most of our seats, because we're on rolling admissions, and a lot of schools are on rolling admissions, especially later in the cycle, most of our seats are already spoken for at that point. And so when we're continuing to interview after, say, January or so, those are going to be for seats that come open for people that have forfeited their seat or chose not to accept their seat. So you want to be earlier in the cycle, but I would say as long as you have your application in by, end of August, early September, you're definitely in the front end of that whole application pool. For DO schools, for osteopathic schools, our cycle kind of peaks in October to November with the number of applications. So if you're at least ahead of that a little bit, then that's probably a better spot to be.
That's great advice. My final question to you is something that's not related to admissions. It's something that I just love to ask my guests, regardless of how they're related to medicine, because we all have touch points with the healthcare system. So we all know that the U.S. healthcare system is far from perfect, but if we had a magic wand and we can change anything about the healthcare system, what's one thing you would choose?
One thing. That's a hard question. Insurance really bogs things down. And I wish physicians and providers of all sorts would have more autonomy without having to run it through some insurance companies that maybe are reviewing procedures or maybe more intricate type, or it ends up being more expensive types of procedures, but they don't necessarily have the background to review those or to really understand like the physician you're working with does. So I do understand why they do it. They do want to keep costs down and not have unnecessary procedures and billing and things like that. But it does, to me, get in the way sometimes. And I wish physicians didn't have to battle with insurance companies so much. That's probably the one thing I hear from physicians all the time is just that they love what they do. They love the patient care. They love helping with the healing process. But the insurance companies make it to be, they take the joy out. And I wish that wasn't the case.
You're speaking language for this out there who may not be familiar with this, there's a thing called prior authorizations.
Yes.
And basically, the meme version is you have this insurance company calling your doctor to ask your doctor if they think you should have a procedure or a medication that they already ordered. So it takes a lot of time and sometimes it gets denied. So those are things that you should be asking when you're shadowing and talking to other doctors about the business side of medicine, which may not be as fun.
Yeah.
So
I wish that there was more, I just wish costs were lower like there are in a lot of countries too. Because I know a lot of people that don't go see the physician because they have insurance, but they have high deductibles. And so it's a lot of out-of-pocket costs and they don't have the money to pay for it. And so, there's a lot of people that are not getting the care they need, or they're not getting the medications they need because they're, rationing them and things like that. And that just breaks my heart. So Absolutely. I wish that was not the case.
Absolutely. There are so many things that we can fix to improve our healthcare system. And thankfully, we have all of the listeners out here who are applying to school who can hopefully make it a lot better than what it is now and work to advocate for some of these changes.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes. So it was so wonderful for you to share all of your words of wisdom with us. I just want to give you an opportunity to say goodbye to the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks for tuning in. This has been a great opportunity. I've been on a few podcasts, and it's always just been a joy to be able to talk to potential applicants and give you some words of wisdom from somebody who's done this for quite some time. I love helping students and giving you some pathways to be able to get to where you're going. I do recognize this is a very difficult process, a very long, arduous process. My son went through a physical therapy application process, so I saw it from his point of view, and that was actually very eye-opening, even though I've been doing this for a long time. So I do try to keep some very strong awareness that not everybody has somebody guiding them through the process, or maybe has a connection within the medical field to help them with the process. So please let us and, whoever is on, Erkeda's side of things and on medical school sides of things, make sure that we're in the process for you. That's our jobs. But reach out whenever you need help. We're happy to answer those questions.
Thank you. And for all of the listeners, she's saying good stuff. I think that you should definitely reach out to us if you have any questions, any topics that you want us to cover, or any specific guests that you want us to invite on. You can reach out to Med School Coach on their Instagram @MedSchoolCoach, or you can reach out on my personal Instagram, Dr. DeGram, DOCTOR, the letter D, GRDM, and just let us know what you want to hear. I'll see you next week with another amazing guest. Bye.
Thank you.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward medical school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.